The following podcast is a Dear Media production.
Today we have Jordan Younger here, host of the Balanced Blonde podcast, also on Dear Media, author of Breaking Vegan, and longtime content creator. This is a total treat for me because she's also someone I'm very fond of. Jordan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. We're also neighbors. We're also friends. I love your son.
Same.
Atticus loves you.
Same.
So it's just perfect to be here. I'm so thankful.
It's also funny that this is how we're getting together, which does happen, I feel like, in this day and age.
It does. I know. I'm trying to be better about not being that way, just being more available and more spontaneous. And that's one of my goals for 2023.
It's actually so perfect that you just started off with that, which is because this week we talked all about the future and connecting with your future self, and how by doing that you can actually make it easier to make choices that really benefit yourself later on. And I was wondering what you were thinking about for the future and what you were hoping for yourself and what you were kind of focusing on.
I mean, such a perfect time to have this conversation. I take New Year's very seriously, not in the way of putting a ton of pressure on a date on the calendar is going to change your life, but more I like the excitement of a clean slate and switching things up. So I also like to take December really cozy. I've just been home a lot with the baby, and I like to think about and visualize the future year ahead. And I'm all about visualizing my future self. So I do see a lot of new routines. I see leaving a lot of things in 2022, walking away from them for good, people pleasing, really working on boundaries, working on that constant balance of being a mom and having a career that I love. And I don't know, I have a 1-year-old, so I'm newer to the balance. And I know that you took a lot of time off when you had your son. And I always tell you how inspiring that is to me. And I kind of did that. I just didn't do it for as long. So I still crave this time with my son, but I also have so many ambitions heading into 2023 that we can talk about if you want to. Yeah, so I have realized lately, because I have been sick, and we'll talk about this in bite-sized form, but with chronic Lyme disease, since I was 26, now I'm 32, I have realized that with being sick, I have kind of coasted along for the last many years on the foundation that I built when I was younger, much younger, with the Balanced Blonde. I built the podcast, built the blog, have this incredible audience, and I've been coasting, which is great, but now it's time for more. I have bigger ambitions. I realized I was living in a lot of fear of not having enough energy to maintain a bigger career, a bigger me, a bigger brand. And it might sound crazy to some people because I know I have done a lot, and the Balanced Blonde is something I'm so proud of. But there's a lot of newness. There's books that I'm writing. There's something coming early next year, which is going to be more of a hub for everyone with meditations. And it's going to be really exciting. So I haven't talked about it much, but kind of dropping the deets here.
That's so exciting.
It's going to be really good. And it's all the stuff I've dreamed up for many years and always thought, not now. Maybe in the future. Not now, maybe next year. And now it's just time.
And now it's time. Oh, I love that so much. And I say this all the time, that I'm really proud of you and the way that you have, I think, really integrated motherhood into your life, which obviously I took a significant amount of time off, which but I don't think, and I did a really good job, I think, at doing that. But what I really had to learn, which I think that you got to quicker than I did, was integrating your pre-Atticus life into your professional life and all these other pieces, which I think is really beautiful. So I think that's so exciting that it's now. And the thing is, when I was thinking about you and what I wanted to talk with you about, one of the things I've always known about you is that you've always really listened to your gut. like you've been good at that. It's something maybe not always, but as far as I've been aware of you and something that you've come to in different places, whether it's breaking vegan or with different parts of your career. And I was wondering if you had any advice for people who maybe had a hard time connecting to their gut.
I take a lot of time to go inward, and I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older, and I have had to live a different type of life because of dealing with chronic illness. So I have always listened to my gut because I think it's a bit of who I am. It's very Libra. You're a Libra too, aren't you?
No, I'm a Capricorn.
Oh yeah, duh.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Totally mixed you up, but I got that Libra vibe from you for a second.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, also Capricorn vibe. So I've always been very connected to my gut, and that's why I wrote Breaking Vegan when I was 21. And even though I no longer connect really to that, I know that it serves a purpose in people's lives, which makes me feel really good. But as I got older, I had to learn to listen to my gut and intuition even deeper. And I think the best way to do that is to take time for stillness. So many of us don't do that. Even when we're alone, we're listening to a podcast or we're on the phone, voice noting our friends, texting. I mean, it's what I'm doing all day long too. Yeah. But we have to carve out that time to whatever you like to do, whether it's exercise in peace and you can really get your mind going, tap into your gut, your intuition, or take a bath. I take a bath every single night. That's a fun fact about me. I'm a big relax, unwind in the bath kind of girl. I meditate. I know that's not for everyone, but I love Joe Dispenza meditations. Those have really changed my life. And I think we can't listen to our gut and intuition if we're not taking time to get still and get quiet with our mind.
No, it's completely true. And we talk about it a lot and how that affects our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with food and all of that. And I think in talking about that, and you touched on this a little bit about chronic illness, and I think you've been so generous about the way you share that because I think it really helps a lot of people. And I was wondering, A, how you're feeling right now, and B, I was really curious about your ketamine journey.
Oh, yeah. We have to talk about ketamine and psychedelics. We could talk about that all day long.
Yes, please. But first, how are you really?
How am I feeling?
Yeah.
I've been better, to be honest. I really learned how to heal myself, which I feel so passionate about with mindset and food and lifestyle, cutting a lot of stress out of my life, finding so many good functional medicine doctors, Chinese medicine doctors. I became my own advocate. And those of us with chronic illness, we joke that we have an unofficial PhD or we're unofficial doctors, which obviously don't take our medical advice, but for yourself, that's what you have to become. And I did that for the last 6 years. So I got to a really good place before I had Atticus. And then pregnancy was a lot on my body. I had a really healthy pregnancy, thank goodness, but postpartum was physically a lot. It's very inflammatory to the body, which you know, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can either imagine or have experienced firsthand. And for someone with chronic illness, the main thing we're trying to avoid is inflammation. Yeah. So I've been struggling a little bit. That's part of why I'm trying to find more of a balance now, because I'm so extreme. I'm very all or nothing. I just dove into motherhood, as you have to do. And it's been amazing. And I dove back into my work pretty early on in motherhood too. And it became a lot. So I'm dealing with my health now. I have a couple new avenues of healing that I'm trying. I'm a wellness guinea pig. I'll try anything. I'm a spiritual guinea pig, and that brings us to ketamine. So I've been into psychedelic therapy since 2018, which is, back in the throes of Lyme disease. Yep. I was so hopeless. I was pretty much at the point where I felt like nothing's going to heal me. I'm going to live this way forever, and or not to be morbid, but this is going to kill me. And it's crazy to look back and say that, but I also have been feeling so sick again that I get back into that headspace. very tough. And I think people have a misconception about Lyme because you can see someone with Lyme who's thriving, they're doing great. It's really not that big of a deal in their life. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there are some of us with Lyme who really are fighting for our lives. So that's how I found psychedelics. And they completely transformed my perception of life. I went into my first psychedelic journey with the intention to find out why do I have a chronic illness? And I found out why. It was a combination of so many things, including lineage stuff that I've been carrying for many, many, many generations, that lives in my body. And then stuff from my actual life, from my childhood, trauma. Trauma's all relative, of course. So some of these things I've revisited through psychedelic journeys and realized that that was traumatic, that I haven't given that enough credit. So done a lot of personal healing, focusing on this life, but also bringing in the ancestral trauma. And I call myself a pattern breaker for the lineage. So it feels like a calling and also a duty to continue on the psychedelic path, which has opened me up to wanting to be a facilitator someday for others on this psychedelic path. I know there's such a spiritual reason for me getting sick with Lyme and everything that goes along with Lyme. And part of that is awakening to this spiritual journey that I was always a spiritual person, but have taken it clearly to a whole different level ever since this healing path, and it's been amazing. So ketamine, I've been exploring more recently. We hear ketamine and we're like, oh, people do that at clubs. Like, I didn't know that because I'm very naive, but I recently learned that on the internet because people were going crazy when I started talking about it. And there's the K-hole and all of that. When you're doing it with a psychedelic therapist, someone who's trained, someone who really knows how to hold space and also understands the whole range of why people do this type of ketamine therapy, it's so different than that. It's so safe, but it is incredibly psychedelic. So I used to do ketamine IVs, which I call meditative and a little bit psychedelic, but then I started doing intramuscular ketamine therapy, and that takes you to pretty much another planet within 20 seconds. So that has been where I've been this whole winter. And then I just say, like, I return to Earth every so often. I mean, I'm joking, but not really, to talk about the experience.
Oh my goodness. Like my jaw just dropped. I mean, I've heard you talk about it a little bit, but that is so interesting. And for you, it has felt incredibly healing.
Yeah, for me, it's felt incredibly healing. And I know it's not for everyone. So every time I talk about it, well, I hate to give disclaimers because it's like, I think we are all aware that everybody's different and there is no magic cure. What works for me might not work for someone else, but I will say I've gotten a lot of friends and a lot of people who are also struggling either with physical health or mental health or both. For me, it's been a lot of both. I've gotten them on the train and it's been incredible. I think a key piece is the therapy component. I have been able to do a lot of inner healing with my ketamine therapist that I haven't really visited when I've done other psychedelic journeys and ceremonies, because he really keeps me present and keeps me accountable. So when I'm so deep on the journey, he'll say, how does this relate back to your life? And what do you want to do about it? And then I've taken action in my daily life based off of some of the visions that I've seen, the visualizations that I've had, the places that I've been. And it has changed me from the inside out. I'm a calmer person, a happier person. I don't have any sadness about the fact that I have gone through all of these chronic illnesses. I feel grateful.
Wow. I'm actually stunned. That is such, I've heard you speak about it a little bit, but to hear you speak about it this way is actually really powerful. Wow. One of the things that I keep hearing from listeners is that they're really enjoying hearing about people like you who have found a lot of success in this track that isn't necessarily so mainstream. And I was wondering if you attributed it to anything specifically.
Yes, I think even if I think back to my childhood, I have never been a mainstream person.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time. The older that I've gotten, I look back and I see my entire life and was like, oh, nothing about me was mainstream. Nothing about me was normal, quote unquote. Nobody's normal, by the way, but that's a whole other topic to get into. However, I tried to fit into a very normal mold for most of my life, and that caused a lot of anxiety in my belief system. It also can cause illness. It's a lot of trying to bend and fit into a way that is really not your authentic self. And that's not a fun way to live. I think back to myself in college. I was partying. I was drinking every night. I was in a sorority. I was having fun. I don't regret those days, but I certainly was not who my authentic self is in my heart. And I knew that. I would actually fantasize about a day that I was married and had a baby and was kind of just being who I really am. And sometimes I have to look back on that and think, whoa, I have that now. I'm living that now, to be so thankful for what I have now, even though I'm still healing and I'm still growing every single day. So I would say to your listeners, embrace not being mainstream, embrace not being normal. And a lot of people, even people who listen to my podcast or people in my family, they feel like scared to do something that's really against the grain. What if people will judge you? What if people think you're crazy? First of all, you don't owe an explanation to anyone. You can explore these things. You can talk about them if you want to. You can keep it to yourself if you want to. I would encourage people to be open, because what do you have to lose? I think anyone who does judge you, it's coming from a place of their own insecurity and their own projections. So that's what I've had to learn, but in a more public way, because it's not just my friends and family for me who see what I do. I share everything to a fault, and I don't know. It's written in my birth chart. It's written in my human design. I'm a reflector in human design, which basically means a mirror. So if you're with me, or if you're with any reflector, you see yourself. And if you don't, and I'm not speaking with any sort of just about me, just reflectors in general. If you don't like something, it might be something that you need to confront about yourself. If you love something, then, maybe you're really happy about where you are in your life. And of course, we're all mirrors, but human design is fascinating. Do you know your human design?
I don't. And I'm so glad that you're going into this realm, because what I really wanted to ask you was, talk about human design, but I also know that you love numbers and numerology. Yes. And I was like wondering what you were feeling collectively for the year.
Yeah. I do love numbers and numerology. But this is different. All of it is like wrapped up into a similar umbrella, but they're all different in their own way.
Yes.
My lucky number is 201. People are always like, what? Because that's like a string of numbers. But even my son was born on 12/21/21, and I manifested that. And it's just cool. It's like, I believe in synchronicities. I believe that the universe is always working in our favor. I believe that there's a divine plan for everything that was orchestrated before we were even born. So I believe in the eternal souls of it all. You're an eternal soul. I'm an eternal soul. Everyone listening. And these are our human bodies. And it's so important to take care of them and also be present here in this life. But yeah, collectively for the year, I really do feel like 2023 is going to be the clean slate that many of us are wishing for. I think it's been a really tough few years. And I think after 2020 and everything that happened and how much everyone's lives changed, I think we wanted 2021 to be different, 2022 to be different. And for many of us, that hasn't really been the case. We've been slowly emerging into a new life, a different life. And I do think 2023 gives us enough distance from a lot of that to create new routines, new habits, new joy to really thrive. I just see a lot of newness. We're in the Aquarian age, so the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is all about new directions, all about independence, all about not being mainstream, by the way. So I think these things that sound so taboo to us right now, potentially psychedelics, potentially I don't know what else. There's a lot of taboo subjects I think are just going to become more and more normal, more and more mainstream. I mean, especially as psychedelics get legalized for therapy. You're going to be hearing your grandparents talk about this, you know?
Yeah.
It's wild. And to me, it's exciting.
Wow, that is exciting. And it is so exciting. And I think that newness piece I really relate to, and I feel really strongly about too.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions that I ask all the guests just to wrap things up. The first is, what is something that's really grounding you right now? It could be a thing or a practice or even a person, like something that's making you feel really grounded.
The first thing that comes to mind is my husband, even if it sounds kind of cheesy.
No, I know you guys together. I totally buy this.
He's my literal other half.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't leave my house for like 3 weeks because I had bronchitis. So I think I would have gone mental. I've been struggling anyways, but I would have really had some huge breakdowns. He really kept me grounded. He just knows who I am. Like, if I'm not showing up as my true self, and like I said, I'm writing these books, but I could go months without writing, and he'll sit me down and be like, what are you doing? This is the one thing that you care about and you're not doing it. And he just keeps me whole. He really does. And he's my inspiration too, because he doesn't compare himself to anyone. He doesn't worry about what anyone thinks about him or me, and I just need more of that in my life.
I love that so much. I love seeing you guys together, and I adore him. He is such a good egg, and I think it's so sweet for people to hear you say that, and it really tracks. The last one's kind of silly, but I do think that people get curious, which is, what is a meal or a snack that you could never get sick of?
Okay, this is going to be a surprising one.
Okay.
It's random. I'm very into khichdi.
Okay.
The Ayurvedic dish.
Yeah.
And it's weird because postpartum, I've had so many food aversions. I haven't been able to eat like any of the foods that I normally love.
Oh,
if you had asked me this question a year ago, I would have said like bananas and almond butter, or chocolate banana nut butter. Like, that whole thing is so me. I don't eat any of those things anymore, at least right now. I have just had major food aversions. I think it's hormonal.
Yeah.
Postpartum is wild, and I'm just really into savory foods, and I could eat khichdi for every meal. We have had this incredible postpartum Ayurvedic chef who makes food for us, not all the time. I make khichdi too, but it's always in our fridge, and I'm always eating it. So I highly recommend. I have a recipe on my website if anyone is what is khichdi. It's an old blog post, but you know, oldie but a goodie.
Well, it makes sense to me just intuitively, given the fact that like you have been so inflamed and you have been kind of in this getting back to basics, and that really is the food that historically people eat right after they give birth to like heal from the inside out.
Yes, so it's very nourishing.
It's like a warm hug.
Yes. What's your answer to that question?
There's like, I guess, so many things, but I also do this weird thing where I like, which I say not to do, which is I will like get so into the thing and then eat it so many times because I love it so much, and then I won't want to see it again. I've been doing spaghetti squash all the time with like, there's a bunch of different blends that I'll do it with, but there's something about it to me that it's like, it takes 20 minutes to roast. It feels like a special thing. And so, I don't know, it's cozy to me.
Yum. I want to make that.
Jordan, thank you so much for being here. This was such a treat.
Thank you for having me. This was very special. Anytime. Love you.
Love you.